Guys, I just finished reading A Little Life, and I feel like I need to talk about this book in the series. Some books change you, some books stays with you long after you've turned the last page. And A Little Life, a novel so deep, raw, and emotional, it will be in my head for a long time. Welcome to the series The Genius Of, and for the first time, we're going to talk about a book. Hanya Yanagihara's A Little Life, published in March 10, 2015, follow a chronological narrative of the lives of the four college friends, Jude, Willen, JB, and Malcolm, as they navigate through adulthood in New York City. The book is divided in 7 parts, and you feel in the beginning that the novel doesn't have a protagonist, but at its heart, the novel is about one man, Jude St. Francis. His life, his pain, his friendships, and his struggle to cope with the past so dark, it threatens to consume him. Now, before we talk about the book, let me briefly talk about the author. Hanya Yanagihara. I apologize for my Japanese. Hanya Yanagihara is an American novelist, editor, and journalist. Born in 1974 in LA, California, she grew up in Hawaii. Father's from Hawaii, and her mother was born in Seoul, South Korea. She's partly of Japanese descent through her father and partly Korean through her mother. She began her career in publishing and journalism, eventually becoming the editor-in-chief of T magazine, the New York Times style magazine. Hanya's debut novel, The People in the Trees from 2013, was inspired by a real-life event to explore themes of colonialism, scientific ethic, and morality. However, it was A Little Life that cemented her reputation as a literary force. Hanya has been influential in the world magazine publishing, known for her keen editorial vision and commitment to thought-provoking storytelling. Her newest novel, from 2022, To Paradise, further showcased her ability to weave intricate narratives across different timelines and themes. I'm saying right now that I only read A Little Life, looking forward to read the other 2 books, but there's no comparison in this video with her other works. Okay, let's get back to A Little Life. Hanya's novel is not an easy read. It delves into extreme trauma, self-hatred, abuse, and a lifelong impact of childhood suffering. It's also a story about friendship, the different forms of love, and the way people try, and sometimes successfully, sometimes not, to heal. Jude's trauma shapes every aspect of his life, making even simple joys feel like a burden. Friendships are his anchor, but even the most devoted love can feel insufficient when facing the ghosts of the past. The novel constantly asks a haunting question. Can love ever be enough to save someone? At the start of the book, I felt almost a sense of hatred towards Jude. Almost like a feeling like, come on man, move on. What is the past is in the past. That's without knowing what actually happened with his life. But slowly, the author reveals, in long flashbacks, some of them makes real-time ongoings, what happened with Jude, and how much that affects his daily life and daily routine. And that's when things get really dark. Reading A Little Life, guys, sometimes for me, it feel like watching Friends. You know, when not comparing themes or relationships, of course. But most of the times, nothing really happens. Most of the book, you just immerse in the scenario, New York City weather, and its peculiarities passing through all the characters and their lives, the interactions, encounters, and routines. But there's also a time, a chapter, or a passage, and then comparing with the episode, that everything changed. You get information on something really important happens that the whole book just carries an extra weight to it. And the book gets heavy and heavier as it goes. Beyond Jude, A Little Life follows the lives of the 3 closest friends, which of whom plays a significant role in his story. Willen Hagnarsson, kind and compassionate, aspiring actor, one of Jude's closest friends and later his partner. Coming from a background of hardship himself, Williams offers Jude unwavering love and support, often acts as his protector. He is the novel's strong example of unconditional love and loyalty. Jean-Baptiste Marion, or JB, talented and ambitious artist, is a charismatic but also self-absorbed at times. He struggles with his own insecurities and substance abuse, leading to a strained relationship with Jude. Through their friendship is tested, he remains as an integral part of the group. Malcolm Irvine. He's the most reserved of the four. He's an architect who comes from a privileged background, often caught between his ambitions and family expectations. He serves stabilizing presence in the group, though sometimes is very emotionally distant. Apart from the core group, there's two characters that is worth mentioning that have significant impact in the story and Jude's life. Andy, contractor, is Jude's longtime physician and one of the few people who knows the stings of his physical and psychological trauma. He deeply cares for Jude and often expresses frustrations as Jude's unwillingness to seek proper care. Despite this, he remains a steady presence, treating Jude as a mix of professional concern and personal attachment. Harold Stein is a law professor who, along with his wife Julia, become a father figure to Jude. Harold eventually adopts Jude as his son, offering his unconditional love and family bond that he never had. He represents stability, warmth, and possibly of healing, even though Jude struggles to fully accept it, constantly asking why him and if he deserves all of this.
But I wanted Willem to be, I went back and forth with my editor and with my reader about this. Was Willem too saint-like? And I actually think that if Willem is guilty of anything, he's guilty of being willfully ignorant. As a reader, I think there are certain points in the narrative when the reader knows more than the characters, and there's some places where the characters know more than the reader. But I hope one of the things that the reader can sense is how much agony Jude is in at certain points, and how Willem chooses not to see it, how he chooses to see that life is going to keep unfolding in the way he hopes it will. And I don't think that hope in this sense he's being callous about it, but I think that hope too can be a very dangerous thing, and it can be something that blinds us to seeing the person in front of us. I wanted him to be a character who really loves Jude and really offers a different sort of way for Jude to see himself, even though Jude can never quite see it. But I also wanted to create a relationship that wasn't quite a straight friendship in all senses of the word, and wasn't quite a romance either. And what was it like? I think women have ways of living in that sort of liminal space between a sexual or romantic relationship and, a friendship. And again, as women, we can move back and forth, in and out of those relationships very easily. Whereas when men do it, the second they do it, they're gay. And I actually don't think of him as gay. I think of it as a relationship between, I wanted it to be about two people who kind of had come to realize that they didn't fit into the conventions of any kind of relationship and decide to hang in there anyway.
Each of these friends and the two characters represents different aspects of Jude's journey: love, ambition, stability, and while also highlighting the complexities of friendship over time. And we're talking about maybe present time, it's almost 20 to 30 years from college all the way to 50, 60-year-old. Hanya's writing is both beautiful and brutal. We talk about how slow pace can be sometimes, but also with all the information that she gathers, everything feels so much more live and real. It's almost like you're in the room or living the lives of the characters. She doesn't shy away from the darkness corners of the human experience. And for me, it's one of the things that make A Little Life so unforgettable.
This book is very over the top. It's very maximalist. It's very unapologetic about demanding the reader's attention. I think it's greedy for the reader's time. I think it's rude in a lot of those ways, and it's not tidy. And people have said to me that it's excessive, and that it's extravagant. And that excessiveness and extravagance is something that, if you've been taught that that a book has to be tidy and a book has to be neat, is something that you really have to unlearn. If you've never been taught that, you have a great deal of freedom in sitting down and writing something, especially when you only have one reader. And I only had one reader. The reader was someone I am in an intense friendship with and an intense relationship with. And so in many ways, this book felt like the outgrowth of that relationship. It felt very much like a novel, a conversation in novel form. And because I never showed it to my editor all the way throughout, I never showed it to my agent all the way throughout, there was no one ever telling me, this is too much and you have to step back. And for some writers, you really do need that circle of friends, or that circle of writers, or that circle of teachers. But I think sometimes when you want to write a book that, where there's a lot that you shouldn't technically be doing in it, it's helpful to not have many readers and to really just allow yourself to go so deeply into the life of the book that the rules of writing, and the rules of writing a novel specifically, really becomes sort of abstract and academic.
The descriptions of Jude's internal battles are almost excruciatingly raw. When he's cutting himself, when he's trying to kill himself, when he gets beat when he's young, when he gets beat when he's older, all those things are so technically and so precision and small detail that you almost at some parts, especially when describing the cutting parts, I almost feel like grabbing my wrists and holding my hands because I felt that I was cutting myself as well. It's sort of like poetic rhythm, the way that she writes about suffering, making the pain feel almost lyrical. The structure of the novel, which is shifting timelines and intimate character perspectives, immerses the reader in Jude's world, making his anguish feel personal. It's almost impossible to remain detached, and we are forced every single time to experience Jude's pain as deeply as his moments of fleeting joy. Let's talk about Jude St. Francis. He's one of the most profoundly complex and deeply developed characters in contemporary literature. Some of the key aspects from his death. Jude's past is one of relentless suffering, from abandonment to abuse, making his psychological state intricate and layered. Self-destructive tendencies, self-loathing, and inability to accept love highlight a long-lasting impact of trauma. Despite his immense suffering, Jude is also very intelligent, accomplished, and deeply loved by his friends. We can't forget that he is one of the most respectable and recognizable lawyers in New York City, working for a big company for the whole duration of the book. He's making his life a paradox. A very strong, resilient work figure and very fragile and impersonal life. We immerse in Jude's perspective, making his pain and fleeting joys feel visceral. His internal monologues, physical struggles, and emotional turmoils are described in haunting details, creating an intimate, almost suffocating connection between Jude and the readers.
I mean, I think that you talk about someone who doesn't get better, and by the time you finish the book, you kind of get completely why he doesn't get better. No matter how lucky and successful he's been, that he can't really uncouple himself from before. And was that the starting point for the book, Jude, and then the constellation of people around him?
He was someone who came to me fully formed in a lot of ways because, in a sense, he was very easy to write because his internal logic is his own and it never quite changes. And he tries to get better and he doesn't. And I wanted there to be an inevitability to his life. It's not that I think that people can't overcome great trauma, but I think for some people there is a line, there is an amount, and they're not able to come back from it. And one of the things I tried to do in this book was really glide a lot between past and present tense. This idea that if you're living with trauma is not something that happened in the past and then there's a hard dividing line and it's the present. Trauma is something that's waiting in the next room, behind that curtain right next to you. So this idea that you live with trauma every day, and some days you can live with it a little less intensely, but other days you can't, is something that I really wanted to try to convey with grammar, more or less. This idea of within the space of a couple of sentences, memories creeping back in or falling out, to sort of try to mimic this sensation of living with your past when you're trying only to live in the present.
His interactions, especially Willem and Harold, plus his friends, reveal different facets of his personality. His relationships serve as both lifelines and battlegrounds, reflecting his inability to let go of his past and his desperate attempt to belong. Jude's body bears the physical scars of his trauma. He refuses to seek help, his self-harm, his eventual fate underscore how deeply ingrained his suffering is. And I think what Hanya scores over here is that it's not just a psychological trauma. He has physical scars as well, which is sometimes we talk about trauma from the past and sometimes it's just psychological, that I don't want to say it's easier or harder to let it go, but you also have a physical trauma that affects you in the daily lives and give you pain. Sometimes he's on a wheelchair, sometimes he's not, sometimes he have excruciating pains for weeks, sometimes he's okay. That how physically he's affected with the trauma in the past, I believe it makes it hard for him to heal For all its praise, A Little Life is also a divisive book, and wow, either love or hate. Some readers and critics argue that the level of suffering despite is excessive and even gratuitous. Others say it's necessary, unflinching portrayal of trauma that gives voice to those who live through unimaginable pain. Some critics argue that the novel lacks nuance and portrayal of trauma, making it feel relentless. Others praise its willingness to show suffering without sugarcoating reality, emphasizing the complexities of mental health and survival. And I think if you're watching this video until now, you're on the good side here, and I'm also on the good side. Biggest point of Little Life is it forces us to confront discomfort, to think about trauma in the way few books do. It lingers, it devastates, and in its own way, it heals. We need to stop thinking that everything has a good end. We need to stop thinking that everyone is perfect. We need to stop thinking that things are just gonna go away. We need to work throughout, day after day, be strong, and learn how to live with. One of the other things that the book did, to put in a big perspective, is to talk about mental health and mental wellness in a sort of like what's right, what's wrong. I don't have all the questions, I don't have all the answers, maybe the author doesn't have, but at least putting out there and having all those videos and people talk about a book in 2025, I think she passed the message that she wanted to. It's always like at the start of the book, you hope that at some point things will get better, and they do sometimes, but midway through, I felt that I accept the fact that things will stay the same or even get worse. And accepting that midway through a book, it feels weird. Also, like, it's very powerful because I stopped cheering for a better life and instead just became a passive reader. If you ask me, no, I did not cry reading this. I just felt sad throughout and then sort of empty at the end. If you decide to pick up A Little Life, know this: it hurts, but it's also remind you of the power of love, the endurance of friendship, and the complexity of human soul. Some books fade, some books remain, and then there's books like A Little Life. Books that break you, then rebuild you in ways you never expect. Thank you for watching The Genius of A Little Life. I'm sorry I couldn't cover all the topics I wanted to, but this is the first time I talk about a book on this series, and I'm still trying to figure out a way to do a better job since I only talk about bands, music, and artists. But let me know in the comments if you're on the good or bad side. Did you love this book? Did you hate this book? Drop a like, subscribe to the channel please, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.